Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another show. The whole region is reaching a turning point, and more events are taking place, and everything is headed towards more escalation, at least by the signs that we are seeing so far. Saudi Arabia shocked the whole world with a new defense pact with Pakistan, escalations happening from other countries too, military preparations, but there have been several things in the past couple of days, especially in the last week, that are giving us signs of what's to come. One of those, and there will be more that I will be talking to you about later. One of those things is the military drill between Turkey and Egypt in the Mediterranean. Egypt and Turkey declared that they're going to have a military drill. As a matter of fact, the Turkish Defense Ministry only announced this on Friday last week. They said that it's aimed at strengthening the bilateral ties and boosting their militaries respectively. Okay. All of a sudden, the biggest drill between Egypt and Turkey after preparations have been happening and relations are at their all-time best, according to the Turkish officials now. But what about the timing? The drill called Bahr al-Sadaqa or the Friendship Sea will run on September 22nd to September the 26th. What else is going to happen between the 22nd and the 26th? This is what's going to happen between the 22nd and the 26th. The Freedom Flotilla, 50 vessels, 50 ships, Gaza aid is going to be reaching the Eastern Mediterranean area to go inside the Gaza Strip and break Israel's siege. Is that a coincidence? Well, let's try and analyze things around. This drill from Turkey and Egypt, it hasn't been declared. No one said anything about it before. It was only recently declared, Friday last week. Why did they all of a sudden decide to have a big naval drill? And why were they late in announcing it? And why did they choose the time when the ships are going to be arriving towards Gaza? Look at again the route of the ships. Okay. Some of them are, of course, coming from Tunisia. Some of them are coming from Barcelona, Europe, of course, all European countries and uh, North African countries. This is where they're at in terms of the journey. Okay. So they're almost halfway through. And they have about a week to reach this area, several days to reach more towards the eastern part of the Mediterranean. That is very likely to come at the same time when Turkey and Egypt are going to be conducting a drill. Expected scenarios. Israel said it already prepared to deal with them. They're going to be dealing with them with what they call Sayarat Matkal, one of their elite units in the Israeli Navy, designated primarily to take down special operations. They previously uh, took down the Mavi Marmara at the time, which was very famous, again, from Turkey at the time. Israeli genocide soldiers at the time and terrorists were killed, but also nine Turkish aid people were killed as well. They were martyred after clashes with the Israeli units. What can happen if the flotilla comes to this area and Turkey and Egypt are in the middle of a drill? Several scenarios. It's a message to Israel, we're here. Hmm? These are international waters, and also your siege on the Gaza Strip isn't legal anyway. All of the eight flotillas that are going to Gaza are backed legally 100%. What if these ships that are sailing from this area and going to Gaza all of a sudden reach towards the eastern part of the Mediterranean, and Israel starts to attack them, or they feel threatened. Let's not say Israel attacks them, they feel threatened. What do they do if they feel threatened? They send warning signals, SOS. SOS signals and warnings will reach every ship in the region, warship or no warship. Okay. The signal reaches, assuming again everything will collide in this period, and it is very likely. Again, we're not here to bring about the predictions or anything, but I'm saying it's very likely. They're there, they call SOS every ship. The Turkish and the Egyptian ships will receive the signal. They're going to decide to help. If they're going to decide to help them, this is a direct military clash between Israel and Turkey and Egypt in the Mediterranean. Either Israel will back down, which is going to look very embarrassing, and the Zionists really care about how they are perceived. They're trying to flex muscles and intimidate the whole region and the whole world. It's going to be very humiliating for them to retreat if Turkish and Egyptian ships arrive to help the aid flotilla. The second option is to clash. Israel attacks Turkish and Egyptian ships, trying to stop them from committing terror in international waters by preventing aid from going to people facing a genocide and a starvation campaign by the so called Jewish state. What's going to happen at the time? That's going to be a declaration of war. And a declaration of war is not going to end in the sea. It's going to begin in the sea, but it's not going to be ending in the sea. This is a declaration of war against two of the strongest armies in the region, the Egyptian army and the Turkish army. And both of them have very strong navies. Both of them have high capabilities with everything: fighter jets, missiles, air defenses, you name it. And both of them are in a very bad situation in terms with Israel. Both of them have been preparing for a war with Israel, both Egypt and Turkey. Egypt already, according to Israel, has broke every line of the Camp David Accords. They cut the ties, secure ties with Israel and Sinai. They deployed over 100,000 troops in Sinai from 2 years ago. Now, recently, they deployed a further 40,000. And very recently, they just deployed a HQ-9B long-range Chinese air defense system in the Sinai Peninsula without telling anyone what they're doing, because they're saying this is our territory. We're not telling anyone anything. Turkey, everything. Drones, fighter jets. They introduced a ballistic missile, internal communication systems that only the Turkish army will get hold of, and bunkers preparing the country for an all out war. And of course, underneath all of that, there's already a war going on in the intelligence arena between all of these countries combined. Recently, Turkey had multiple state Turkish officials made multiple statements, especially Netanyahu and Erdogan, both of them were having a lot of talks, especially in relation to Jerusalem. By the way, both of them have been having statements. Benjamin Netanyahu saying this is our eternal capital. We're not going to get out of it. It's forever going to be ours. But there were also other statements coming in from Recep Tayyip Erdogan as well, saying that Jerusalem is the honor and pride not only for Muslims but for the whole world. Netanyahu tried to attribute himself the Silwan inscription. He was criticizing him about not giving him this inscription previously. We, the descendants of the Sultan, will not give Netanyahu even a single stone from the stones of Jerusalem. We are not guests here and we are not invaders. We are the masters of this region for 1,000 years and we will remain so until the end of time. We ruled for hundreds of years in areas our opponents only reached 2 or 3 generations ago. We will never allow the enemies to desecrate holy Jerusalem. Turkey has been in the service of Jerusalem and its protection for 400 years. Statements that are very hostile to Israel have also been coming from Egyptian officials. And most recently, there was a statement coming from the Turkish foreign minister, who was, well, previously the Turkish head of the intelligence, Hakan Fidan, saying that at the moment, and we're talking about Egypt and Turkey having a navy drill here, they are hinting at a joint defense agreement between Egypt and Turkey. And he said that it's the best relations that he had with Egypt in history. Close coordination on the Palestine issue and also the Libyan Sudanese issue too. A lot is happening and a lot is changing. Could the battle between Israel and Turkey and Egypt begin from the Mediterranean? And is this a deliberate timing? I mean, really and truly, there is no other explanation. They only declared this huge naval drill between the two armies last Friday to be implemented and to take place 2 weeks later, at the time of the arrival of the aid flotilla to the region, which Israel already threatened it will be taking down, stopping them. What if they call for aid? What if there is a collision? What if Israel starts to attack these ships? We are immediately in a state of all out war. Because if you attack a military ship, you declared war. Of course, every country under the sun already has the right under international law to carry out a preemptive strike against Israel anyway, as a reckless entity of terror. And now that has been further solidified and strengthened with the recognition of a Palestinian state, let alone Israel trying to meddle with Turkey and Egypt inside of the Mediterranean. Huge tensions, and there's a very high likelihood that this was deliberate. And note what's happening here. Israel's committing a genocide. So many calls to stop. They don't want a ceasefire. They don't want anything. Fully backed by the United States. The peak of Israeli arrogance came after they attacked Qatar. Not to say that that was the worst of their crimes. No. Every day they're committing the worst crimes in Gaza, and even before the recent genocide for the past 76 years, 77 years against the Palestinian people, and even before that. But now, their attack against Qatar, a mediator, a country that is supposed to be protected by the United States, all of a sudden, all of that collapsing, Saudi Arabia literally slapping the United States in the face with a defense pact with a nuclear country called Pakistan, calling Iran the next day with the potential of expanding this defense pact. And now we have talks about a potential defense pact between Turkey and Egypt, and them sending the ships to the Mediterranean simultaneously with the arrival of the aid flotilla, and Israel is still arrogant and still continuing. Someone tell me this is all a coincidence. Things are happening. Things are changing. The world is changing. The strategic coalitions are changing. The era of the unipolar world led by the United States has ended. We are witnessing the emergence of a multipolar world with no necessarily one power dictating everything. And finally, the Arab and Muslim leaders are starting to realize that whether you deal with them or not, whether you try and impress them or not, whether you try and take yourself out of the picture or not, they are coming after you. because they view you as below them. That's the colonialist, supremacist mentality that they have. And that's why the Qatari foreign minister and prime minister said, we have been betrayed. Betrayed by who? Betrayed by the same people who you believe are there to protect you. They're not there to protect you, and they're not going to lift a finger for you in the face of Israel, who's milking it all the way with the knowledge and blessing of Donald Trump and the United States administration. They had to wake up finally, but we haven't even seen what's coming. What's coming next is far bigger than what we have witnessed so far, bigger than the genocide, bigger than the war with Iran, bigger than everything else. Because we are talking about a scenario of an all out war with the strongest modern militaries in the region. Assuming that, and it is very likely they will, Israel will dare to poke either Turkey or Egypt. And it isn't just stopping with Turkey and Egypt. The shift is starting to take place, especially with the recent statements that were made by the Secretary General of Hezbollah. Hezbollah, traditionally, them and the Saudi authorities haven't been in a good relationship, whether it was in Syria or internally, but likewise with Iran. But now the whole dynamics is changing. And there was a recent significant call from the Secretary General of Hezbollah saying that the region is facing an exceptional turning point, and I call on Saudi Arabia to open a new page with the resistance. Israel is our enemy. We are here together. Let's open a new page, put all of our differences aside. In effect, Hezbollah is telling Saudi Arabia will be your front too against the genocide state. And guess what? Don't be surprised if that happens. A country that so quickly goes out of the United States umbrella, Saudi Arabia, a country that conducts drill with its previous main foe in the region, military drills with Iran. In the past 2 years, Saudi Arabia and Iran had at least one military drill together. The defense minister visited Iran. He was met by Khamenei himself, the supreme leader. Said Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran. He met all of the senior leadership. Things are changing, and the changes are far greater than what we can even realize here. And what we're doing, by the way, is just reading what's being made available to us. However, we have to also read between the lines, because if we don't read between the lines, then we're not really getting the greater picture here. And we are talking about a situation where everything is changing. Today, there were more reports about flights coming from Russia to Tehran, from Russia and from Belarus to Tehran with advanced military equipment. The senior Russian ministers were visiting Iran the other day, meeting the top leadership. Iranian cargo as well going to Russia. Flights back and forth, similar to the flights that we saw before Israel attacked Iran earlier last year, similar to the flights that took place during the 12-day war between China and Iran. That, by the way, at one point went off the radar. All of the region is clearly preparing for something very, very big. And these are just some of the things that are happening in the region. In the meantime, Israel is conducting a genocide inside of the Gaza Strip. They're saying either like semi-officially or we don't know type of thing that we started Gideon's chariots B or Benjamin Netanyahu's wheelchairs B inside of the Gaza Strip. But today the Palestinian resistance is still attacking them on the outskirts of Gaza with ambushes, taking down Israeli tanks, exploding them, and taking down whoever's inside them. This is outside of the Gaza city in the Jabal.
الله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر ولله الحمد.
The Palestinian resistance is not waiting for anyone. The genocide is still ongoing in Gaza, and they're showing Israel that they are able to conduct attacks against them even when they are left to it on their own with no one supporting them. These scenes are not normal scenes. The Palestinian resistance, after 2 years of full blown genocide and bombardment and infanticide and urbanicide and scholasticide and every barbarism under the sun in the name of the Jewish state, the so called Jewish state, conducting this barbarism in broad daylight, being live streamed in front of the whole world. And the Palestinian resistance is showing them, no, we're here. Now, let's go back to the scenario of the Mediterranean. Israel has been preparing for a scenario where both Egypt and Turkey might have a siege against them. In the past year, the Israelis have been warning from multiple scenarios that could take place between Egypt and Turkey that would cause Israel huge problems. What are these scenarios? Firstly, the Israelis have been asking the American side to apply more pressure on the Egyptian side to clarify their positions or their intentions in the Sinai Peninsula without response coming from Egypt. Like I said, Egypt has been cutting the communication off completely from the Israeli side inside of Sinai. Benjamin Netanyahu recently made unprecedented threats against Egypt, saying that Egypt is not allowing the people of Gaza to go out. They are, imagine the audacity. Listen to what Benjamin Netanyahu told the Egyptians. He said the Egyptians are not allowing Gazans freedom of movement, a basic human right. Wow. 73% of the population of Gaza is from occupied Palestine that the imposters came and occupied and expelled its people from. So if you ask a person from Gaza, where are you from? He won't tell you. Most of the time, I'm not from Gaza, I'm from either Asqalan or Lud or Yafa or Haifa or Bi'r al-Saba or the Naqab desert. But Benjamin Netanyahu is, of course, not interested in bringing them back to their homeland because he wants to keep Israel a Jewish supremacist entity with a large majority of the Israeli Jewish people against the Palestinian people. But in terms of Egypt, they have been warning very, very many times from the American and from they have been warning the Americans and asking the Americans for clarification and saying that the Egyptians are preparing for something big against us, especially in the Sinai Peninsula and also across the sea in the Mediterranean. Like this was one of the articles that was published uh, several months back in Feb about Israel's warnings from Egypt, what they're preparing, and also the potential that Egypt might force a blockade against Israel inside of the Mediterranean. Now that we're seeing this drill that's happening between them and Turkey, the aid flotilla coming in simultaneously with the timing of that drill, we're 19th of September. The drill is the 22nd up to the 26th of September. They're halfway through. They're supposed to be, well, very close by. And again, what happens if they get a call from the 8th flotilla? Israel is attacking us, or Israel is warning us. And also, it's not going to be an easy job for Israel to have 50 ships. Previously, they had one. 50, you need a lot of resources. You need a lot of manpower. You need a lot of intelligence. Now, why is everything going down this path? Well, it might be obvious for many of you, but it wasn't very obvious to some delusional people. Now, though, the Israeli senior figures from the Israeli delegation and the Israeli negotiating team involved in all of these matters are confirming Israel closed the door on talks. The responsibility to renew them lies with it. The American administration, in a very typical manner, is trying or saying that it's trying to reignite the talks. Again, switching roles with Israel, buying Israel time, whitewashing Israel as if they're robots, as if Donald Trump is a robot regurgitating Zionist propaganda 24/7, expecting the people to believe him and Keir Starmer, the two leaders of the genocide cartel. They were embarrassing with their press conference, regurgitating garbage propaganda. Oh, and they need to forget October the 7th. Okay, what about October 7th? That Israel killed its own people on October the 7th, and that they knew something was about to happen and told their people to stand down. That regurgitating Zionist propaganda. No one's buying that. And even the Israelis themselves are saying to the whole world, we closed the door. The responsibility to renew it lies with Israel. The talks ended, ladies and gentlemen. This is the situation. The talks ended, the negotiations finished. It's only going to escalate from now moving forward. And this is what everyone is realizing, and that's why they're taking dramatic moves, making dramatic moves. Egypt and Turkey are realizing this. They have exhausted every single thing to try and reach a ceasefire, to try and de escalate, to try and have some sort of a deal. Yet they have people like the depraved Bezalel Smotrich, who is named after a village in Ukraine, first, second generation immigrant claiming to be the owner of the land under false, delusional, religious, ignorant beliefs, saying that we demolished Gaza, proudly saying we can finish the demolition stage. Now we need to discuss with the Americans about the building stage. A man who said that we don't mind starving 2 million people to death, but the world won't allow us. That's what the whole world is met with. And by the way, the responsibility is with the whole world from a long time back to stop this satanic genocidal death cult. But now, even after everything has been tried and tested and repeated multiple times, we reached the point of no return. Benjamin Netanyahu is clearly a man who isn't only a psychopath, he's driven by some sort of beliefs and prophecies. I mean, some people filled it in his head like he is, the king of kings. He views himself as King David. Mm. وَالْعِيَاذُ billah, as we say in Arabic. The difference between him and anyone with an ounce of anything good, right? But that's why He is continuing the way he is, and he clearly isn't going nowhere. Now, everyone in the region is realizing the situation. There's no more talking. We can't convince ourselves that there is any talking. The Israelis themselves are saying we closed the door, and it's only going to escalate from now moving forward. The next few weeks are going to be extremely tense, and we wouldn't be surprised if we actually start to see the beginning of the great clash, the beginning of the all out war that will only end with a definite annihilation of the Zionist regime. It will be an all out war. There is no going back. The Turks are realizing that, the Egyptians are realizing that, the Iranians are realizing that, even the Jordanians are realizing that. Now, talking about Jordan, there was an attack from a Jordanian who killed two Israeli security personnel on the borders. The Jordanian authorities officially condemned it. They said it doesn't help and we don't, it's not us, we don't support these actions. However, and again, proving the nature of Benjamin Netanyahu and how much he is seeking this increase of the war, and that's why the other countries are becoming more wary now, regardless of their positions and their alliance with the United, whatever, everything is changing. He blamed Jordan for the attack. Prime Minister accuses Jordan for failing to prevent deadly shooting as cabinet meeting spirals into heated argument between ministers. He he's saying that Jordan is responsible for this attack, where well, two of them were security. One of them is reported to be a military. Some reports said two of them were military. One of them was a lieutenant colonel. Yitzhak Harosh, his name is from Jerusalem, and he was shouting at in that meeting and saying that Jordan allowed them to do that, and they aren't taking any measures to stop these armed attacks against us. We've already had Israel deploying 14,000 terrorists on the borders with Jordan under the pretext of, we need to protect our borders from any sort of attacks or what have you. Again, another signal they're preparing something might happen with Jordan. Because again, uh, one of the scenarios that can happen is simply Jordan can say, well, you know, borders, we're not going to secure them. There are more than enough volunteers. Yemen told them, the leader of Ansarullah, Abdul Malik al Houthi, told them just 2 months ago, just please open the borders for us. We'll send 100,000 people. So, as in, if just open the borders for us. But this is proving that Netanyahu, even with either the condemnation or all of the statements distancing themselves from this attack, is insisting on expanding this genocide. And the next several weeks are very, very likely to carry out even more escalations that will reach things that we haven't seen before. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you. I'll open the space up for some community participation. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for another live stream. And thank you for everyone who sent supers. Alan Marwin, who also said, greetings, Muhammad. Could you talk about the buildup of Israel forces on the border with Jordan? I hope I clarified just now with this buildup. Israel introduced multiple measures in the past year and a half on the borders with Jordan, where they are firstly taking down more construction actions to supposedly protect the border. because there were multiple operations happening from Jordan against Israel by individuals, of course. Then they deployed a new unit. They came up with a new reservist unit that will take care of the Jordanian side, consisting of 14,000 reservists permanently deployed on the Jordanian. It shows you how much they're prepared and how much they're power and how much they know things are going to escalate, even with a country like Jordan that intercepted Iranian missiles. Look at the level of distrust, by the way, even with all of that. So that's what they've been doing so far. And Frost Entertainment as well, and Marvin. Thank you so much for your supers as well. Let's go and take some questions from the community. And if you wouldn't mind, if you want, highlight the comment and so just so that I can reach them quickly with the limited time that we have. Theo is saying, Mahmoud, what's your estimation how the Sumud flotilla will be received? Will they break the siege this time under the eyes of Turkey and Egypt? Well, this is the very interesting thing that I literally came across today. I was looking at the date of the drill of Turkey. I went to the map of the flotilla, and hold on a second. You have is this a coincidence? Okay. Firstly, even without this drill and without protection, which was shameful because I was calling for protection for these people. At the end of the day, we as people are taking the action that our shameful, awful, and in many cases, genocide complicit governments should be taking from a long time ago. Now they should take a move that includes an armed intervention to take down the whole Zionist establishment. But without that, that would have proved to be a challenge for Israel because you're talking about 50 boats this time. 50 boats, it's not just one unit or one whatever it is from Israel, one bunch of psychopaths. You need several bunches of psychopaths to deal with that. But 50, that's going to be a huge problem. It's going to be a massive problem. What are they going to do with them? Now, add to that this flotilla, again, look, coming from Europe, North Africa, multiple parts of Europe, mostly Europe, and of course you have multinationals here, American, Australia, everything, going and having this flotilla. All it takes, all it takes is either a move that would be initiated by the Turkish and Egyptian forces, or a call from one of them, from one of the 50 boats, an emergency call, SOS. We have a terror entity here threatening us. We are perfectly legally going to deliver aid to people facing genocide and starvation, man made genocide and starvation campaign. Can you help us? And the answer would be, yeah, sure. Now, mind you, the prospect of an involvement to aid a flotilla isn't new. Turkey previously had that option on the table because the Mavi Marmara at the time was going out from Turkey was a huge ship and it was carrying substantial amounts of aid. There were calls at the time, things later on diffused. Israel started to allow more aid to go into the Gaza Strip regardless. So now it wouldn't be new. But the only difference is both Egypt and Turkey could use that as an opportunity to say, well, hold on a second, we have everything here, and fine, we will help you. That's a very likely scenario. And by the way, let's be frank, the timing, how rushed the declaration was, indicates that both the Turks and the Egyptians are doing this deliberately to protect them. That's not like something out of the equation. That's a very high likelihood. Again, The defense ministry declared this last Friday, and they're reaching there on between the 22nd to the 26th. So it's as if, both two countries. Firstly, military drills are, by the way, arranged like years in advance, some of them like yearly or whatever, sometimes months in advance to notify multiple countries. And what. Here, they didn't notify anyone, they didn't tell anyone. All of a sudden, they came up and just declared it, and they said it's going to take place within 15 days. What was the date last Friday? The 12th. Oh, in 10 days, we're going to be conducting military drill. That usually doesn't happen. Usually, you will have a declaration, a build-up. Countries will be notified. So there's a very high likelihood something's going to happen. And guess what? If no military altercation will happen and Israel will give in, then that sets a precedent. And more ships will be going to Gaza with military aid, with military support, protection. And that's going to create a new reality that Israel can't handle. So it appears as if the uh, collision is inevitable. And TMZBGD, is there anything that would suggest Turkey and Egypt joining the defense pact? Very, very likely. 100%. I wouldn't be surprised if more countries joined the pact with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. They were talking about an Arab Muslim style alliance, right? Saudi already broke it. And by the way, Saudi Arabia, the biggest country under the protection of the United States, that usually had an example to the other Gulf states. And they still have a lot of influence and power in the Arab world and the Muslim world too. Them doing that 2 days after the Qatar summit, a slap in the face of the United States. That's it. Goodbye. And I'm not being dramatic, by the way. Saudi Arabia doing that with all of the bases in Saudi Arabia, all of a sudden having a nuclear umbrella protection. That is part of it, by the way. And Pakistan is not a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Pakistan does not follow a no first use rule thing. They follow none of that. So all of a sudden you have nuclear deterrence in the Gulf. That's what will create deterrence, not American bases supporting Israel to conduct an attack against what the United States calls allies. And it's about time that the Arab and Muslim world wake up. These people don't view you as equal anyway. They always look down at you. But now you realize by their actions against you, and clearly they're not buying the lies of the American administration that we didn't know. Oh, Netanyahu told me in the last second, and hey, I called you 10 minutes after the missiles landed in a civilian area next to international embassies, by the way, in Doha, an ally of the United States that houses one of the biggest air bases inside of the Gulf. Wavy McFly, if you had to pick one country, who do you think will finally stand up to Israel besides Iran? Do you think it will be a coalition of countries? Thanks, Salam. Thank you. Great question. I think it will be, like you said, probably a coalition because the countries are realizing now that their power is in their unity and coordination. And all of these traditional attempts by the Zionists and their backers, the neo-colonialists, to sow division in the North African and West Asian and other parts of the world is against them. And it has shown them that, look, even if we're nice, even if we play by your rules, Even if we have your bases, we're not protected. That's the final thing. Like, there is no protection. Therefore, I think it will be a coalition of countries rather than countries single-handedly slapping the Zionist state in the face like Iran. And what Iran has done was huge, by the way. Iran was smacking them in the face, one missile after the other. No iron foam, no David's thing, no nothing was working. No Patriot and nothing. Bang, bang, bang. And they haven't used all what they have. And Iran gave an example to the Arab and Muslim world, the whole world. Look, it's a paper tiger that can easily be defeated. Just get yourself together. What Iran has done broke the barriers. It's a country, of course, from a country's perspective, because it was already broken and shattered by the Palestinian resistance, by the way. You know, striking Tel Aviv, striking all sorts, by the from man-made Palestinian missiles in Gaza. But Iran, the scale, the magnitude, the global celebration, the lack of an ounce of empathy with Israel, and the calls for Iran to finish the job, all of that showed everyone, hey, if we go and attack them, we'll be popular. It's not just, that it's a noble thing to stop a genocide, but we will actually become popular. We will be supported. Marvin Vergas, good question. Will U.S. Navy back up Israel if probe with the Egypt, Turkey? I don't think so. Direct involvement, if you ask me, I really don't think so. Because Turkey is a member of the NATO, and the United States did not send its forces to help Israel throughout, although Israel asked them to. Israel asked them to participate. They only had this one pathetic theatrical attack against Iran before, though, just to get Benjamin Netanyahu down the tree, by the way. Let's be honest. It wasn't like, oh, the United States deploying forces. Plus, who's going to go? You're seeing the people in the United States and people from the army and what have you causing scenes, genocide supporting country, we're protecting Israel and we're not here to. So uh, it would be a very stupid move, because if four aircraft carriers were expelled by Yemen, poverty-stricken Yemen, what can these countries do with the confrontation of the United States? The only thing the United States can do is send more arms to Israel. But also they will be facing a huge problem, because that's it. Turkey and Egypt will be blocking and imposing an embargo on Israel. And maybe they will declare a no-fly zone. No flights can come in, that's it. And the United States will realize that it's time to ditch them, let them die. Don't you think the United States has a preparation for that scenario? You'd be wrong to think that. The United States has a day after Israel plan. It's already there. Their secret services spoke about that decades ago. So that wouldn't be anything like out of the ordinary. And Said saying, Salam Ahmed, would NATO the react if Turkey is attacked? Well, if Turkey would ask to invoke Article 5, if I'm not mistaken, with NATO, they can call for protection from NATO states who would be obliged under NATO rules to participate with Turkey against Israel, should they so desire. Mind you, it's not easily invoked. It's not easily pushed. Like even countries that had so-called threats from Russia, the only thing they've done is they pushed for Article 4 or Clause 4, which asks or calls for a discussion about the threats. So it's unlikely that Turkey will ask for a backing from NATO, but they could technically. They have the right to, and that would make NATO obliged to support. Dana, Ron as well, thank you for your comment, and everyone else in the chat, thank you for your participation. Marvin also said, any chance China, Russia will get actively involved? They'll support naval flotilla. They will be supporting. They are supporting. China supported Iran. Um, Russia is supporting Iran. Both of them are supporting Iran. They're supporting. They have support for both Turkey and Egypt too. Egypt found a way out with China, by the way, by having access to Chinese weapons, especially because of the sanctions that they were threatened with should they go to Russia. That's why they went for the Chinese fighter jets and Chinese also new air defense systems. They already deployed in Sinai, by the way, primarily to have a balance between them and Israel, because the United States, although they support Egypt with aid, they never gave them the equivalent of what they give Israel. The Egyptians always complained about that to the Americans, and that's why they started to diversify their military. The US will always give Israel the upper hand. So they can, yeah, but that doesn't mean they will directly be militarily involved, by the way. That means they would support, and involvement, direct involvement is only when things get like really, really, really dramatic. That's not like something that will uh, happen very quickly. And that is normal. That would be something normal for countries to behave that way and to act that way. And we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream. Thank you for everyone who participated in the chat. Apologies, of course, if I didn't reach all of your comments due to the limited time that we have. Thank you for everyone who sent super thanks as well. Marvin, Alan, and Frost. I hope you enjoyed this info and add some beneficial information for you guys. I'll hopefully have a couple of segments for you. In the meantime, stay blessed. Enjoy the rest of your evening, day or night, depending on where you are, and the rest of your weekend too. And I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.